Welcome to HornAfrica Insight, your source for East Africa news. Today's 5 stories. Egypt sets red lines on Sudan during al-Burhan's Cairo visit. President Trump expands the U.S. travel ban to include more African nations. The United Nations calls for the release of 10,000 arbitrarily detained in Eritrea. Somaliland announces plans for oil drilling in 2026 or 2027. And Somalia and Ethiopia hold talks to strengthen bilateral ties. Let's get to the facts. This is HornAfrica Insight. Egypt issued a presidential statement this week during a visit by Sudan's Sovereign Council head, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, laying out what Cairo calls red lines on Sudan's security, explicitly linking Sudan's stability to Egypt's own national security. Cairo's red lines include preserving Sudan's unity, territorial integrity, and control over national resources. Egypt rejects any moves towards secession or parallel governing entities and warns it reserves the right to take measures under international law and the Joint Defense Pact if these lines are crossed. The Egyptian presidency expressed concern over escalating violence in El Fasher and voiced support for President Trump's recent peace initiative and the Quad mechanism, which includes the U.S., Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and the UAE, aimed at achieving a truce and transition to civilian rule. Sudan's civil war has displaced over 12 million people since April 2023, with approximately half the population now facing famine. Both leaders also rejected unilateral actions on the Nile River, a clear reference to Ethiopia's GERD, and reaffirmed coordination to protect their water rights. The question is whether Egypt's red lines will translate into concrete action or remain rhetorical warnings as Sudan's conflict continues. President Donald Trump expanded the United States travel ban on Tuesday, barring nationals from 5 additional countries and Palestinian Authority document holders. The restrictions take effect January 1st, 2026. Full travel restrictions now apply to Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, South Sudan, and Syria. Laos and Sierra Leone also face full bans, while 15 other countries, including Nigeria, Tanzania, and Zimbabwe, face partial restrictions. The administration cited national security concerns, high visa overstay rates, unreliable identity systems, terrorism risks, and poor deportation cooperation. This marks the 3rd iteration of the travel ban since Trump's 2017 first-term policy, which was upheld by the Supreme Court. The full ban list now includes Afghanistan, Eritrea, Iran, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, South Sudan, Yemen, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. Exceptions exist for permanent residents, valid visa holders, diplomats, athletes, and national interest waivers. Critics call the ban discriminatory, noting many targeted countries are Muslim-majority nations. Supporters argue the restrictions protect American security. The impact on African diaspora communities and diplomatic relations remains to be seen. The United Nations Human Rights Office called for the unconditional release of an estimated 10,000 people arbitrarily detained in Eritrea, including politicians, journalists, priests, and students held without charge or trial for years. UN spokesman Saif Magango welcomed the recent release of 13 prisoners held for nearly 18 years in Mysarwa prison, known for harsh conditions, including detention in metal shipping containers. Eritrea has been ruled by President Isaias Afwerki since 1993 without elections or implementation of its 1997 constitution. The country maintains an indefinite national service system described as forced labor. The UN has accused the government of systematic torture and enforced disappearances. Notable cases include the G15 government officials arrested in 2001 after calling for reforms, and journalists detained when independent press was shut down. Former Finance Minister Berhane Abrehe died in custody last year. Eritrea has no free press, and rights groups estimate tens of thousands are imprisoned without legal access. The UN remains ready to engage with Eritrea on human rights compliance. though whether Asmara will respond to international pressure remains uncertain. Somaliland expects to begin oil well drilling by 2027, possibly as early as 2026. President Abdirahman Mohamed Abdullahi announced this during the opening of a minerals expo in Hargeisa, the first major exhibition focused on the region's natural resources. Energy Minister Ahmed Jama Bare said companies have been awarded contracts for drilling rigs and equipment. Onshore basins show hydrocarbon potential similar to oil-producing regions in Yemen, with historical oil seeps indicating favorable geological conditions. The government emphasized commitment to responsible investment, transparency, environmental protection, and community benefits. If successful, oil revenue could transform Somaliland's economy, which depends heavily on livestock and remittances, funding infrastructure including Berbera port expansion. Somaliland declared independence from Somalia in 1991, but remains unrecognized internationally. It has maintained relative stability and seeks foreign investment as a de facto independent state. Whether drilling proceeds on schedule and delivers economic transformation remains to be seen. Somalia and Ethiopia continue to advance diplomatic engagement through a series of high-level meetings aimed at strengthening bilateral relations and regional cooperation. This week in Mogadishu, Somalia's Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Abdisalan Abdi Ali, met with Ethiopia's ambassador to Somalia, Suleiman Dedefo Woshe. The talks focused on expanding cooperation in trade, investment, and economic development, as well as strengthening coordination on peace and security in the Horn of Africa. Both sides emphasized the need for joint responses to terrorism, cross-border crime, and regional instability, while reaffirming their commitment to closer economic and infrastructure collaboration. The meeting in Mogadishu formed part of ongoing diplomatic engagements between the two neighboring countries, which share a long border and deep historical ties. In recent years, Somalia and Ethiopia have intensified security and diplomatic cooperation, particularly in countering extremist groups. Building on this momentum, Somali President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud arrived Addis Ababa yesterday for a one-day working visit, where he was received by Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. According to a statement posted on the Prime Minister's official Facebook page, the leaders held productive discussions that continued bilateral engagements developed over the past year. The talks reaffirmed both countries' commitment to advancing shared priorities, enhancing strategic cooperation, and promoting regional stability and development. The presidential visit comes amid shifting regional dynamics, including Ethiopia's recent efforts to secure sea access, which have generated some tensions. However, officials said the discussions focused on mutual interests and cooperation rather than contentious issues. Whether the latest engagements will result in concrete agreements remains to be seen. From Egypt's red lines on Sudan to the expanded U.S. travel ban to calls for prisoner releases in Eritrea, Somaliland's oil ambitions, and Somalia-Ethiopia diplomatic engagement, the Horn of Africa continues to navigate complex regional and international dynamics. If you found this episode informative, please like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on X for daily updates. This has been HornAfrica Insight. Stay informed.